Hi everyone, I'm Rob Shapiro from Fitchburg State University, and this is the BACB's 5th edition task list item G-13, use the high probability instructional sequence. So what is the high probability instructional sequence? This is the presentation of multiple, often 2 to 5, high probability, which is sometimes abbreviated high P, instructions, for which there is a history of compliance, followed by an instruction that does not have this history of compliance, sometimes abbreviated as a low P. So the presentation of multiple high P instructions, and then following that up with an instruction that is low P. It's designed to increase the likelihood of compliance, and sometimes this is referred to as behavioral momentum. And if we think about that, it should make a lot of sense. The analogy is from physics, where an object in motion tends to stay in motion. Basically, this is about getting that initial compliance, presenting instructions that have a high likelihood of being followed through with. So basically, you get the ball rolling. You can think of it that way. A couple of these high probability requests, and then once the ball is rolling, then putting in place an instruction that doesn't have that history of compliance or a low probability request with the expectation or the game plan that the momentum of those high probability requests will continue through and the low probability request will be followed through with. So how do we go about using the high P instructional sequence? Well, first, we want to identify several behaviors that are high probability, that are likely for an instruction to be complied with. These can be behaviors that are easy for the learner to engage in, they can be behaviors that are enjoyable, and for which there's a history of reinforcement being provided when they are completed. Once we've identified these several high P behaviors, we want to identify the behavior that's low probability, which is the behavior that is less likely to occur when instruction is given, but that we want to have occur. After we've identified the high probability behaviors and the low probability behavior, we then want to present 2 to 5 high P instructions in rapid succession, really within a few seconds of each other, with praise provided for the completion of each. So we get these rolling, there's a high likelihood they're going to be complied with. As soon as they're complied with, we provide praise for it having been complied with, and then immediately present the next one. And then after we've presented these 2 to 5 high P instructions and gotten that follow through and been able to praise, then we immediately follow the last high P instruction with the low P instruction. And then of course, if that response occurs, we provide reinforcement if the learner complies with the low P instruction. So as an example of the high P instructional sequence, let's say we have a situation where a learner is unlikely to comply with the request to stand up when asked. However, this learner may have a history of reinforcement for doing things like touching their ears, clapping their hands, and giving a high five. So where we might see this taking place is, let's say that we've got a learner who's just who's engaging in non-compliance. It's time to leave a given area, and the learner is sitting on the floor and is not responding to requests to stand up. Or it could be more extreme than that. You can actually use this in some cases where you've got a learner who's engaging in some low-level tantrum or more significant interfering behavior. But the bottom line is we've got a learner who's not standing up and who is unlikely to comply with the request to stand up, but has this history of reinforcement and this history of compliance for prompts to touch ears, clap hands, and giving a high five. So the teacher might say, clap your hands. Learner claps hands. Teacher says, great job, touch your ears. The learner touches their ears. Awesome, give me 5. Hand goes out, learner gives 5. Love it, stand up. The learner stands up, and then some kind of reinforcement is being provided. So literally, as quickly as I walked through those steps, talking through them, that's as quickly as we might implement the high P instructional sequence. It's these, rapid succession of these things that the learner is likely to comply with. As soon as the compliance occurs, there's praise for having done it, and then immediately the next prompt is provided. When that one's complied with, again, praise, and then the next one is given, right? And then finally, the presentation of the low P request. In this case, stand up. And when the learner stands up, reinforcement is provided. So As far as using that high P instructional sequence, it can be a useful strategy when a learner has a particular skill in their repertoire but does not engage in that skill consistently. So it's important to remember that. What we're talking about here is a performance deficit, not a skill deficit. The high P instructional sequence is not going to be an effective strategy if the low P request is low P because the learner doesn't know how to do it. Right, this has got to be something that they have in their repertoire already. It's just something that they're not likely to comply with. The high P instructional sequence also creates an environment that's rich in easily obtained reinforcement, and therefore it can minimize escape maintained behavior. So because we're providing all of that verbal praise and rapid feedback when a learner is doing these relatively easy tasks to engage in, the environment is enriched, as opposed to other approaches we might think about when someone is not following through with a low P request, which might be, the classic, well, we're just going to wait them out. Right? In a situation where you're quote unquote just waiting somebody out, you're probably not providing a lot of attention, not providing a lot of reinforcement, and just trying to wait for the learner to engage in the behavior. Which in that kind of a situation, it's a pretty barren environment. There's not a lot of reinforcement, and that can result in some escape maintained behavior. So by having that easily obtained reinforcement and enriching the environment, we make it far less likely the individual is going to engage in behavior to escape the situation. With the high P instructional sequence, building that momentum is key. The more likely the learner is to engage in those high P tasks, and the more quickly they're presented, and then the more quickly the low P task is presented afterwards, the more likely the procedure is to be successful. Again, just thinking about that analogy of behavior momentum, an object in motion tends to stay in motion. The more we can get that motion occurring, the more we can get that responding going, the more likely we are to get that low P request to be complied with. And then just remembering, like any behavior procedure that we might try to put into place, it doesn't always work. And it may take multiple attempts. We may have a situation where we present the high P requests, but initially even the high P requests don't get complied with, particularly if a learner is engaging in non-compliance or tantrum behavior. We may have to take a step back and then re-present, right? And if the learner isn't following through with the high P tasks, we don't have a high P instructional sequence. We don't have behavior momentum. So there's no point in going on with giving the low P instruction. We need to back off and then maybe re-present until we can get those high P tasks complied with. Or we may get compliance with the high P tasks and still not get it when the low P instruction is given. So it may take multiple attempts, and we just want to make sure that we're allowing for that.